The Lands Between is home to a wide variety of creatures coming in all shapes and sizes, but nothing is quite as stunning as witnessing the spectacle that is a walking mausoleum. Before we venture into the Lands Between, here's a quick shout out to Aoa.com, our sponsor. If you want runes, items, armor, and weapons right now, you can get it from these worthy tarnished, and by using the code in the description, you can get 3% off, courtesy of the Inhuman one. The walking mausoleums were truly a sight to behold. These gigantic, lumbering structures stood on 4 stone-like legs, and many were equipped with massive ringing bells that hung from their undersides. Nearly all of these gargantuan creatures were vehemently guarded by a company of undead soldiers and knights whose sole desire in life was to guard these mobile tombs in death. But most important of all was the structure that stood firmly on their backs, the mausoleum itself, not to mention the chilling scene that was hidden beyond the threshold of its doors. For any tarnished, foolish, or brave enough to desire entry, a series of defensive measures had to be bested first. The headless phantoms patrolling the perimeter of the walking mausoleums attacked prospective tomb raiders. The item description for the blood-soaked tabard worn by the foot soldiers reads, "Padded cloth armor with indelible bloodstains around the neck, worn by headless foot soldiers who endlessly guard the wandering mausoleum." But why had they all been decapitated? The mausoleum knight armor provides the shocking answer. Armor worn by headless knights who endlessly guard the wandering mausoleum. The wing-shaped ornaments on its back evoke the Deathbird, a self-inflicted curse that ties the spirits of these loyal knights to the land, having willingly beheaded themselves so that they may serve their masters in death. But who were these masters they so passionately served? The final piece of the puzzle lies within the flavor text for the mausoleum surcoat. The surcoat depicts the mausoleum bell, which rings in constant mourning for the soulless demigods. Not only do we learn about the purpose of the bells, but also what lies hidden in the mausoleum itself: a soulless demigod. This special chamber could only be accessed by destroying the calcified skulls that often gathered around the feet or base of the walking mausoleums. Once a sufficient number of the skulls were forcibly removed, the mausoleum would come crashing down, granting those worthy enough to dispel their magical barriers passage inside. Despite the monumental effort needed to gain access, the tomb itself was quite underwhelming. Decorated with several chests filled with useless trinkets and baubles, and several statues of nameless deities, the only notable detail is the decapitated corpse laying on the stone table. Nearly every mausoleum houses a similar gruesome scene. Despite minor differences in the skin tones of the deceased, they all share the same headless look that was all the rave with their undying followers. At first glance, many would jump to the conclusion that the term soulless referred to none other than Godwyn the Golden. However, he was simply the first of the demigods to perish in soul, while his flesh remained in the realm of the living, a unique occurrence that resulted in his status as the Prince of Death. It seems most likely that other unnamed demigods existed and may have been casualties in the Shattering or even in the age preceding the Erd Tree, especially considering the manner in which they were entombed. The item description for the mausoleum soldier ashes clearly supports this notion. Ashen remains, in which spirits yet dwell, used to summon the spirits of 5 mausoleum soldiers. Spirits of 5 headless soldiers who confound foes by disappearing and reappearing at will. The mausoleum is where the bodies of soulless demigods are laid to rest, and these soldiers followed their masters into death by severing their own heads from their bodies. This method was far removed from an Erd Tree burial, a customary rite where royalty and those well-renowned were buried at the roots of an Erd Tree as a symbol of the highest honor in death. It's possible that these soulless demigods may have perished in an entirely different era, when the ruin of destined death was a non-factor, and the Deathbirds ushered the deceased into the afterlife with their ghost flame. So now that we have a likely explanation as to when the demigods died, the mystery of who they were still remains. The most intriguing possibility comes from the spirit of a deceased commoner who states, "The mausoleum prowls, cradling the soulless demigod. O America, Queen Eternal, he is your unwanted child. Perhaps these unwanted children were those that couldn't quite live up to Queen Marika's standards. Unlike her most powerful children, who were worthy of bearing the rune shards, these were likely unfit to ever achieve godhood, and as such, were simply left beheaded and buried in wandering relics from an age long past. Their soulless nature possibly granted them the unique ability to duplicate remembrances, as each of the demigods buried in the mausoleums eagerly awaited the return of their own souls. Sadly, this day would never come. It's a shame that even the gods themselves can prove to be as shallow and fickle as the fools that worship them, discarding their children due to their perceived inadequacies, and forever striking them from the annals of history, so that only their corpses could hint at the time before the age of the Erd Tree. And that's all for this video. Until next time, it's the Inhuman One, signing out.